Terran command forbids the Galactic Empire from crossing the border. The massive golden towers of Zentara Prime reached high into the purple sky. This was the heart of the Galactic Empire, a place that had ruled over thousands of worlds for 3,000 years. Every alien species in the galaxy either served the Empire or had been destroyed by it. The Empire's warships numbered more than anyone could count, and their weapons could turn entire planets into dust. Admiral Vexithara stood in the central command room, her blue scales catching the light from dozens of holographic displays. She was the supreme commander of the Imperial Navy, and she had never lost a battle. Her forearms moved quickly as she studied the latest reports from the outer regions of the galaxy. The Empire was always growing, always taking new worlds. That was the natural order of things. The strong ruled and the weak served. It had been this way for millennia, and it would continue forever. Then the message arrived. Every communication device in the Imperial capital began to buzz at the same time. The message was so powerful that it overrode every other signal across 12 star systems. Even the Emperor's private channels were blocked by this transmission. A human face appeared on every screen. It was a woman with short dark hair and cold gray eyes. Her uniform was simple and plain, nothing like the fancy clothes worn by Imperial officers, but her voice carried a strength that made even the mighty Admiral Vexithara pause. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of Terran Command," the woman said. Her words were clear and calm, as if she was discussing the weather instead of challenging the most powerful force in the galaxy. "You are hereby warned that the Sol system and all space within 50 light-years of Earth is now under the protection of the Terran Defense Coalition." The Admiral's scales bristled with anger. Humans were barely more than animals. They had only recently learned to travel between stars. Their entire species lived on just one small world at the edge of the galaxy. How dare they speak to the Empire this way? But the human woman continued speaking as if she could see the Admiral's thoughts.
"Any Imperial vessel that crosses into our territory will be turned back.
Any act of aggression against our borders will be considered an act of war. We suggest you find another route for your expansion plans." The message showed a map of local space. A bright red line marked the boundary that the humans claimed. That line cut directly through the Empire's planned route to the outer spiral, where rich worlds full of valuable resources waited to be conquered. "This is your only warning," Commander Chen concluded. "Choose wisely." The transmission ended, leaving the command room in stunned silence. General Kree was the first to speak. His forearms waved wildly as purple blood rushed to his face in rage. "Impossible! These humans number only 8 billion souls on one tiny world. Our intelligence reports say they only achieved faster than light travel 50 years ago. They dare to threaten us?" Admiral Vexithara's mouth twisted into what her species considered a smile, but humans would have called it terrifying. Her sharp teeth gleamed in the light. "Prepare the Third Fleet," she ordered. "We will remind these primitive mammals why every species in the galaxy bows before Imperial might." Lieutenant Zexani, the youngest officer in the room, raised one tentacle hesitantly. "Admiral, should we not inform the Emperor first? This seems like an important decision." The Admiral's laugh was like the sound of breaking glass. "The Emperor has more important matters to consider than the delusions of a species that still uses chemical rockets. We will deal with this quickly and quietly. By tomorrow, the humans will be begging to serve the Empire like every other species." Within hours, the order went out across the Imperial Navy's Third Fleet. 350 warships began their journey toward the edge of Imperial space. Each ship was larger than most space stations, filled with enough weapons to level continents. The smallest destroyer in the fleet carried more firepower than the humans had used in all their wars combined. The fleet's flagship was the dreadnought Eternal Dominion, a ship so massive that it had its own gravity field. Its main cannon could punch through a planet's crust, and its shields could withstand the explosion of a star. Admiral Vexithara stood on its bridge, watching the stars streak past as they traveled through hyperspace. "How long until we reach the human boundary?" she asked. 6 hours, Admiral," reported the navigation officer. "Shall I prepare the standard surrender demands?" "No," the Admiral replied. "We will make no demands. These humans need to learn that challenging the Empire has consequences. We will destroy their pathetic defense fleet, then take their world. The survivors can serve as an example to any other species that might consider defying us." But even as the Imperial fleet raced toward what seemed like an easy victory, Strange reports were coming in from the border regions. Trade ships that had tried to cross the human boundary found themselves mysteriously turned around, appearing back where they started with no memory of how they had gotten there. Imperial scouts sent to observe the human defenses had simply vanished, their tracking beacons going silent without any distress signals. Captain Urix of the cruiser Subjugator had been studying these reports. Something about them bothered him, but he could not figure out what. The humans had no technology that could do such things. Their ships were primitive, their weapons basic. Yet somehow no Imperial vessel had successfully crossed their border since the warning had been issued. Perhaps, he suggested to his first officer, we should approach with more caution. The disappearances suggest the humans may have capabilities we do not understand. His first officer, a veteran of 100 battles, laughed. Captain, you worry too much. No species we have encountered has ever surprised the Empire. The humans will fall like all the others. By this time tomorrow, their world will fly the Imperial flag. As the Third Fleet prepared to drop out of hyperspace at the human border, Admiral Vexithara felt the familiar excitement that came before battle. She had crushed rebellions on a dozen worlds and conquered 3 entire species. Adding humanity to that list would be simple. She had no way of knowing that the humans had spent the last 50 years doing something that no other species in the galaxy had ever attempted. While other civilizations built bigger guns and stronger shields, humanity had been asking different questions. Instead of wondering how to destroy their enemies, they had wondered how to make destruction itself impossible. The Admiral stood on her bridge, surrounded by displays showing the awesome power of the Imperial fleet. Soon, she thought, the humans would learn the price of defying the Empire. Soon they would understand that some forces in the universe could not be challenged. She was about to discover that she was absolutely right about that last part, but completely wrong about which force could not be challenged. The countdown to hyperspace exit continued, and the Admiral prepared to add another easy victory to her long list of conquests. The Third Fleet was ready for battle, confident in their overwhelming superiority. They had no idea that they were about to encounter something that would change their understanding of what was possible in the universe forever. Terran command forbids the Galactic Empire from crossing the border. The Imperial Third Fleet burst out of hyperspace like an angry storm, the space around them filled with the energy waves from 350 massive warships. Each vessel gleamed with polished metal and deadly weapons. They arranged themselves in perfect battle formation, a sight that had made entire civilizations surrender without firing a shot. Admiral Vexithara stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, her flagship dreadnought. The ship was so large that small cities could fit inside its hull. Its main weapons were already charging, ready to blast any human ship that dared to challenge them. Scan for enemy vessels, she ordered. Show me what pathetic defense fleet these humans have assembled. Lieutenant Zexani bent over his sensor console, his tentacles dancing across the controls. For a moment, everything seemed normal. The sensors showed empty space ahead, just stars and cosmic dust. Then something changed. Admiral, Zexani's voice carried a strange tone. The sensor readings are unusual. Before the Admiral could ask what he meant, the empty space in front of them began to shimmer like heat waves rising from hot ground. One by one, ships began to appear. Not dozens or hundreds, but thousands upon thousands. They seemed to materialize out of nothing, as if space itself was giving birth to them. The human ships looked nothing like Imperial vessels. Where Imperial ships were built for intimidation, with sharp angles and threatening weapon ports, the human ships seemed almost alive. Their hulls curved and flowed like water, and light seemed to bend around them in impossible ways. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Terran defense ship Indomitable," came a calm voice across all communication channels. "You are now in violation of Terran space. Turn your fleet around and return to Imperial territory immediately." Admiral Vexthera's laugh echoed across the bridge. "Look at them. Their ships are tiny compared to ours. The largest human vessel is smaller than our escort frigates. They think they can stop the Imperial Navy with toys and parlor tricks." She turned to her weapons officer. "Target their flagship. Prepare to fire a warning shot across their bow. When they see the power of our guns, they will surrender like all the others." But before the Imperial ships could fire, something impossible happened. The massive cruiser Subjugator, one of the most powerful ships in the fleet, simply stopped moving. Not gradually, not with the slow deceleration of engines shutting down, but instantly, as if it had hit an invisible wall in the middle of empty space. Captain Urix felt his ship shake as the engines strained against whatever was holding them. "Engineering report. What's wrong with our propulsion?" "Sir?" came the confused voice of the chief engineer. "There's nothing wrong with the engines. They're running at full power, but we're not moving. It's as if space itself has become solid around us." More Imperial ships found themselves trapped in the same way. Destroyers, cruisers, even the mighty battleships of the line were frozen in place like insects in amber. Their engines roared, their thrusters fired, but they remained perfectly still. "What sorcery is this?" Admiral Vexithara demanded. "No technology can simply stop a ship in space without destroying it." Commander Chen's voice came across the communication channels again, still perfectly calm. "You're probably wondering how we're doing this. It's actually quite simple once you understand the basic principles. Space and time aren't as fixed as most species believe. When you really understand gravity and the fundamental forces, you can convince reality to be more flexible." On the main display, a human ship approached the trapped subjugator. The human vessel was so small it could have fit inside the Imperial ship's cargo bay. It moved with an easy grace that defied the laws of physics, sliding through space without any visible engines or thrusters. A mechanical arm extended from the human ship and gently touched the hull of the subjugator. Instantly, the Imperial vessel's shields vanished. Not overwhelmed by superior firepower, not drained by sustained attack, but simply gone, as if the ship's defensive systems had forgotten how to exist. "This is Dr. James Hawking of the research vessel Curiosity," came a cheerful voice. "I hope you don't mind, but I wanted to take a look at your shield generators. Fascinating design, though rather primitive. You're using brute force energy projection when you could achieve the same result by simply asking local spacetime to redirect incoming energy. Much more efficient." The Imperial officers stared in horror as more human ships approached their trapped vessels. Each touch from a human ship caused some system to fail, not through damage but through some incomprehensible process that made their technology simply stop working. "Admiral," reported the sensor officer, his voice shaking with fear, "our quantum computers are trying to calculate how they're doing this. The results don't make sense. According to our analysis, they're not using technology at all. They're rewriting the laws of physics in localized areas." Admiral Vexithera felt something she had never experienced before in her long military career. Complete helplessness. Her fleet, the pride of the Imperial Navy, was as powerless as children's toys in the hands of these impossible humans. "Open a channel to the human commander," she ordered, her voice tight with barely controlled rage. Commander Chen's face appeared on the main screen. She looked exactly as she had in the original warning message, calm and professional. Behind her, the bridge of her ship was surprisingly simple, with clean lines and soft lighting that seemed almost peaceful. "Admiral Vexithara," Chen said, somehow knowing the Imperial officer's name without being told. "I'm sorry it had to come to this. We really did hope you would take our warning seriously. Release my ships immediately," the Admiral demanded. "The Empire will not tolerate this humiliation." "Your ships are perfectly safe," Chen replied. "No one has been harmed and your vessels haven't been damaged. We've simply convinced the local spacetime to hold them gently in place. Think of it as a very polite arrest." Dr. Hawking's voice joined the conversation. "We're actually quite proud of this technique. Traditional space battles are so destructive and wasteful. Why destroy perfectly good ships when you can simply ask reality to make them temporarily stationary? Everyone goes home alive and we can have a civilized conversation." The Admiral's forearms clenched into fists. "Conversation? You dare speak of conversation after attacking the Imperial Navy?" "We haven't attacked anyone," Chen pointed out reasonably. "If we had attacked you, this conversation wouldn't be possible. Your ships would be gone along with everything in this star system. We chose the gentle approach because we're hoping for a peaceful resolution." Captain Urix, still trapped aboard the subjugator, managed to get his communications working long enough to ask the question that was burning in every Imperial officer's mind. "What are you?" "No species in the galaxy has technology like this." There was a pause before Chen answered, and when she spoke, her voice carried a hint of something that might have been sadness. "We're what happens when a species decides that the universe's rules are more like suggestions. We asked very politely if physics might consider working differently for us, and it agreed." The Admiral stared at the human commander, trying to understand what she was dealing with. Every Imperial database said that humans were a primitive species, barely capable of space travel. Yet here they were, casually violating fundamental laws of nature as if they were minor inconveniences. "What do you want?" Admiral Vexithara finally asked. "Nothing complicated," Chen replied. "We want you to respect our borders. The galaxy is big enough for all of us. We have no desire to conquer your worlds or challenge your empire. We just want to be left alone to develop in peace. And if we refuse?" Chen's expression didn't change, but somehow the temperature on every Imperial bridge seemed to drop a few degrees. "Then we'll have to be less polite about asking space-time to keep you away from our territory." The Admiral realized with growing horror that this was not a negotiation. It was a demonstration of power so absolute that resistance was not just futile, but impossible to even contemplate. Terran command forbids the Galactic Empire from crossing the border Emperor. Valdris materialized on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion in a flash of golden light. His massive form towered over every other being in the room, his 6 arms moving in patterns that showed his barely controlled fury. For 3,000 years he had ruled the galaxy without question. No force in the universe had ever successfully challenged Imperial might, until now. "Explain to me," his voice boomed across the bridge, "how a species that learned to fly between stars less than a century ago has made my most powerful fleet helpless." Admiral Vexithara's scales had turned pale with shame. In all her years of service, she had never faced defeat. Now her entire fleet sat motionless in space, held prisoner by forces she could not even understand. "My Emperor," she began, "their technology defies all known science. They appear to manipulate space and time itself. Our weapons cannot target them. Our shields cannot protect us, and our engines cannot move us." Lieutenant Commander Erix had been studying the human ships for hours, running every scan and analysis possible. His findings made no sense according to everything the Empire knew about physics and engineering. "Your Majesty," Erix reported, his voice shaking slightly, "their vessels exist in a state of quantum uncertainty. Our sensors detect them, but they also detect them as not being there at the same time. Their hulls seem to phase in and out of normal space-time. And their power sources—" He paused, checking his readings again. "Sir, they don't appear to have power sources at all. They're drawing energy directly from the fabric of reality. As if summoned by their conversation, a small human research vessel approached the Imperial flagship. It was barely larger than a shuttle, looking like a toy next to the massive dreadnought. Yet every Imperial officer watched it with growing fear. The human ship extended what looked like a simple mechanical probe and touched the Eternal Dominion's hull. Instantly, the ship's entire defensive grid shut down. Not damaged or overloaded, but simply ceased to function, as if the concept of shields had become temporarily.
"Impossible. This is Dr. James Hawking of the
research vessel Curiosity," came a cheerful voice that seemed completely unaware of the terror it was causing. "I hope you don't mind the intrusion, but I wanted to examine your shield generators more closely. Remarkable engineering, though you're making it much more complicated than necessary." Emperor Valdris stepped forward, his presence filling the bridge with an aura of absolute authority. "Human, you will explain your technology immediately, or face the wrath of the entire Galactic Empire." There was a pause before Dr. Hawking responded, and when he did, his tone was that of a teacher explaining something simple to a confused student. "I'm afraid it's not really technology in the way you understand it, Your Majesty. We've simply learned to ask the universe to work differently for us. Physics, you see, is much more negotiable than most species realize." The Emperor's eyes blazed with anger. "Impossible. The laws of nature are absolute." "Oh, they absolutely are," Dr. Hawking agreed cheerfully. "But laws can be amended if you ask politely and understand the proper procedures. For instance, right now I'm having a conversation with local gravity about whether your ship really needs to experience weight. Gravity is being very cooperative." As he spoke, every Imperial officer felt their feet lift slightly off the deck. They were still held in place by their safety harnesses, but the sensation of weight had simply vanished. Then just as suddenly it returned. "Fascinating conversation," Dr. Hawking continued. "Gravity is actually quite chatty once you get to know it. Very philosophical. We spent 3 hours last week discussing whether falling is really the natural state of objects, or just a habit they've gotten into." Chief researcher Dr. Millax, the Empire's leading expert on alien civilizations, had been studying humanity since their first detection. Her image appeared via hologram, her tentacles writhing with agitation. "Your Majesty," she reported, "I've been analyzing human technological development for the past several months. The results are disturbing. In less than 2 centuries, they've progressed from wooden sailing ships to manipulating fundamental forces. Most species require tens of thousands of years to achieve basic spaceflight." She activated a holographic display showing human development curves. "Look at this progression. They went from first flight to nuclear weapons in 40 years, from nuclear weapons to space travel in 15 years, from space travel to faster-than-light engines in 50 years. But that's not the frightening part." The display zoomed in on recent human achievements. In the last decade alone, they've solved mathematical problems that our greatest minds declared impossible. They've developed theories about reality that we can't even comprehend, and according to our deep space monitors, they're still accelerating. Emperor Valdris studied the data with growing unease. "What do you mean still accelerating?" "Their rate of technological advancement isn't slowing down, it's increasing," Dr. Millix explained. "Every year they make breakthroughs that should take centuries. Every breakthrough leads to 10 more. They appear to have entered a state of exponential development that shows no signs of stopping." Commander Chen's voice interrupted their discussion, broadcast from the human flagship. "We can hear your conversation, by the way. Your communications aren't as secure as you think when space-time itself is willing to carry messages." Dr. Millix is quite perceptive in her analysis. The Emperor turned toward Yi, the main screen where Chen's image appeared. "Human, explain to me how your species achieved such impossible advancement." Chen smiled, and there was something both gentle and terrifying in that expression. "We asked different questions than everyone else, Your Majesty. While other species focused on building bigger weapons and stronger defenses, we wondered why things had to work the way they did. Instead of accepting that gravity always pulls down, we asked gravity if it might consider pulling sideways occasionally. Instead of assuming that faster-than-light travel was impossible, we asked space if it might be willing to scrunch up a bit to make distances shorter." "That's ridiculous," Emperor Valdris protested. "You cannot simply talk to natural forces as if they were living beings, can't you?" Chen asked. "Have you ever tried? The universe is far more conversational than most people realize. Quantum mechanics, for instance, loves riddles. Thermodynamics is very concerned with fairness and balance, and relativity has a wonderful sense of humor, though its jokes take a while to understand." Dr. Hawking's voice joined the conversation again. "Yesterday, one of our researchers convinced local time to run backwards for 30 seconds just to see what would happen. Time was quite accommodating, though it asked us to please not make a habit of it. Apparently running backwards gives time a headache." The Imperial officers exchanged looks of growing panic. They were dealing with a species that treated the fundamental laws of reality as friendly acquaintances willing to grant favors. "What do you want from the Empire?" Emperor Valdris asked, his voice heavy with the weight of potential defeat. "Nothing at all," Chen replied simply. "We want to be left alone to continue our research and development. The galaxy is vast enough for both our civilizations to thrive without conflict. We've drawn our borders clearly, and we ask only that you respect them. And if we refuse, if we mass our entire fleet against you," Chen's expression remained calm, but something in her eyes suggested depths of power that the Empire couldn't even imagine. "Then we would have to convince the universe to be less accommodating to Imperial technology. We really prefer not to do that. It seems rude to ask reality to play favorites." Emperor Valdris realized he was facing something unprecedented in galactic history, not a more powerful enemy, but a species that had somehow transcended the normal rules of existence itself. "Your fleet will be released unharmed," Chen continued. "Please return to Imperial space and inform your government that the Terran border is absolute. Any vessel that attempts to cross it will be gently but firmly redirected back to where it came from." The Emperor looked around his flagship's bridge, seeing fear in the eyes of officers who had never known defeat. He was beginning to understand that this was not a battle the Empire could win through force. The question now was whether the Empire could learn to coexist with neighbors who treated impossibility as a minor inconvenience. Terran command forbids the Galactic Empire from crossing the border. What happened next was not a battle in any sense that the Imperial forces could understand. The humans did not fire weapons or launch attacks. Instead, they simply showed the Empire what reality looked like when physics decided to be helpful. Commander Chen's ship, The Indomitable approached the trapped Imperial fleet, with the easy grace of a dolphin swimming through water. As it moved, space itself seemed to ripple around it, as if the vessel was pushing through something thicker than vacuum. "We're going to give you a demonstration," Chen announced across all channels. "Consider it an educational experience. We want you to understand exactly what you're dealing with when you think about crossing our borders." Reality shifted. One moment, Admiral Vexithara was standing on the bridge of her flagship. The next moment, she found herself in what appeared to be a vast amphitheater, floating in the middle of space. She could see stars in every direction, but she was breathing normally and felt no cold despite being in the vacuum. Every Imperial officer from every ship in the fleet was there with her, standing on invisible platforms that supported them in perfect comfort. Yet when she looked at her sensor display, it still showed her safely aboard the Eternal Dominion. "Welcome to a pocket of folded space-time." Dr. Hawking's voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Don't worry about the contradiction of being in two places at once. We've convinced local reality to be more flexible about the definition of location." Emperor Valdris found himself standing next to common soldiers and junior officers, all of them equally bewildered by their impossible situation. "This cannot be real," he declared. "Reality is much more negotiable than you think," came another voice, older and carrying the weight of vast knowledge. A human figure materialized before them, an elderly man with wild white hair and eyes that seemed to hold the secrets of the universe. "Allow me to introduce myself," the man said with a gentle smile. "Dr. Albert Hoffman, Director of Theoretical Reality Research. What you're experiencing is perfectly real, just not in the way you're used to thinking about reality." Around them, holographic displays began to appear, showing the truth about human expansion beyond Earth. The images revealed things that should have been impossible, yet clearly existed. They saw asteroids that somehow occupied 17 different dimensions simultaneously, while still being perfectly solid in normal space. Planets that existed in the same location as their own moons without any conflict or collision. Space stations that were bigger on the inside than the outside, containing cities that should not have been able to fit within their hulls. "You see," Dr. Hoffman explained, "we didn't just develop technology. We became friends with the fundamental forces of nature. We discovered that the universe is much more willing to cooperate than anyone had ever realized." The displays showed human ships traveling between stars without using hyperspace or warp drives. Instead, they simply asked space to be shorter for a while, then walked across the reduced distance at normal speeds. "This is impossible," General Crix protested, his forearms waving frantically.
"Space cannot simply change its dimensions because you ask it to."
"Why not?" asked a new voice. A young human woman appeared next to Dr. Hoffman, looking no older than 20. "Space doesn't mind being different sizes. It's very accommodating once you explain what you need." Dr. Hoffman gestured toward the young woman. "This is Dr. Lisa Chang, our youngest department head. Last month, she successfully negotiated with Entropy to run backwards in a small laboratory. The results were quite fascinating." Dr. Chang blushed slightly. "It was just a small experiment. I asked Entropy if it would mind working backwards for an hour, and it agreed. We managed to turn a cup of cold coffee into hot coffee without adding any energy. Entropy said it was actually refreshing to work in the opposite direction for a while." The Imperial officers stared in horror as more displays showed the true extent of human capabilities. They saw human children learning mathematics by having conversations with numbers themselves. Schools where students studied physics by asking gravity and electromagnetism to demonstrate their properties personally. "Our education system is quite effective," Dr. Hoffman noted. "When the laws of physics are willing to teach themselves, learning becomes much more interactive." Emperor Valdris felt something he had not experienced in millennia: genuine fear. "What are you? What have you become?" "We're still human," Commander Chen replied, her image appearing among them. "We've just learned that the universe is much more friendly than anyone ever imagined. We asked politely if things might work differently for us, and reality was surprisingly agreeable. The display showed human colonies on worlds that should have been uninhabitable, planets with poisonous atmospheres where humans lived comfortably because they had convinced local chemistry to be less toxic. Worlds with crushing gravity where humans walked normally because gravity had agreed to press less heavily on them. The secret," Dr. Chang explained cheerfully, is in how you ask. The universe responds much better to polite requests than to demands. We always say please and thank you when we ask reality to bend a little. Admiral Vexithera found her voice at last. This is madness. You speak of natural forces as if they were conscious beings, aren't they? Dr. Hoffman asked with genuine curiosity. How do you know they're not? Just because they don't communicate the way biological beings do, doesn't mean they're not aware. We've found that quantum mechanics has quite a personality once you get to know it. Very playful, always interested in new experiments. The demonstrations continued, each one more impossible than the last. They saw human engineers building structures that existed in multiple time periods simultaneously, allowing them to be constructed before the materials were even gathered. Scientists conducting experiments where the results were known before the questions were asked, because they had convinced causality to work backwards. The universe, Dr. Hoffman explained, is much more interested in cooperation than conflict. When we stopped trying to force it to obey our will and started asking for its help, everything became possible. Emperor Valdris watched the displays with growing despair. Every image showed humans casually violating fundamental laws that the Empire's best scientists considered absolute. They had not just advanced beyond other species, they had transcended the normal rules of existence. What do you want from us? He asked finally. Nothing, Chen replied simply. We want to be left alone to continue our research and exploration. We're not interested in conquering your empire or enslaving your people. We just want to develop in peace. But surely you must want something, General Crix insisted. Power resources territory? Dr. Chang shook her head. Why would we need to take resources from others when we can ask matter to arrange itself into whatever we need? Why would we want territory when we can convince space to give us more room? And as for power? She gestured around them at the impossible amphitheater floating in space. We have the cooperation of reality itself. What more could we possibly want? The truth of their situation began to sink in for the Imperial officers. They were not facing a more advanced enemy. They were facing a species that had somehow convinced the universe to play by different rules. Your fleet will be released now, Chen announced. You'll find yourselves back aboard your ships completely unharmed. Please return to Imperial territory and inform your government that our borders are absolute. They are not enforced by weapons or shields, but by the fundamental structure of space-time itself. Any vessel that attempts to cross into our territory will be gently transported back to where it came from, Dr. Hoffman added. We've asked space to be very careful about this. No one will be hurt, but no one will be allowed to pass without permission. Emperor Valdris realized he was facing a choice that would define the future of the galaxy. The Empire could either accept these new neighbors or face a conflict against enemies who had the universe itself as an ally. As the impossible amphitheater faded away and the Imperial officers found themselves back on their ships. They carried with them the knowledge that the galaxy had changed forever. Humanity had not just joined the community of spacefaring species. They had redefined what was possible for life in the universe. Terran command forbids the Galactic Empire from crossing the border. The Imperial Third Fleet returned to Zentara Prime, carrying the most unbelievable report in the Empire's 3,000-year history. Admiral Vexithara stood before the High Council, her blue scales pale with the memory of defeat, trying to explain how the most powerful naval force in the galaxy had been stopped by creatures who treated physics as a friendly conversation partner. You expect us to believe, sneered Counselor Thex, his tentacles writhing with disbelief, that these primitive humans somehow convinced gravity to work differently? That they negotiated with space-time itself? I know how it sounds, Admiral Vexithera replied, her voice hollow. I would not believe it myself if I had not witnessed it. But I have recordings, sensor data, testimonies from 300 ship captains. The humans have achieved something beyond our understanding of what is possible. The evidence was undeniable, but still difficult to accept. Every Imperial vessel that had attempted to approach the Terran border since the fleet's return had experienced the same gentle but absolute rejection. Ships would approach the invisible line, then suddenly find themselves back where they started, with their crews having no memory of being moved. Dr. Millix, the Empire's chief xenoarchaeologist, had been working around the clock to understand what they were dealing with. Her latest report was even more disturbing than her previous ones. Your Majesty, she addressed Emperor Valdris directly, Our analysis of human development has revealed something unprecedented. They appear to have achieved what our theoretical physicists call consensual reality manipulation. They are not breaking the laws of physics. They are convincing physics to write new laws. She activated a holographic display showing the Empire's most advanced scientific theories. According to our understanding, this should be impossible. Yet the evidence suggests that humans have somehow established a symbiotic relationship with the fundamental forces of the universe. Emperor Valdris had spent days reviewing the reports, hoping to find some weakness or flaw in human capabilities. Instead, every analysis only reinforced how hopeless any conflict would be. Options, he demanded of his military advisors. General Crix, still struggling with the shame of helplessness, spoke first. We could mass the entire Imperial Navy. Surely even these humans cannot stop every ship in our fleet simultaneously. Admiral Vexisthera shook her head grimly. General, our entire fleet numbers 2 million vessels. The humans stopped 350 warships without any apparent effort. I believe they could handle 2 million just as easily. What about biological weapons? Suggested another counselor. Chemical attacks? Perhaps their reality manipulation does not extend to protecting against disease. Before anyone could respond, the communication systems throughout the Imperial Palace began broadcasting an incoming transmission. The image of Commander Chen appeared on every screen as clear and calm as ever. I hope you don't mind the interruption, she said politely, but we couldn't help overhearing your discussion. Your communication systems are quite sophisticated, though they become much more transparent when space-time is willing to carry messages across any distance. Emperor Valdris stepped forward, his massive form radiating authority even in the face of this impossible intrusion. Human, how dare you spy on Imperial communications? We're not spying, Chen replied reasonably. We asked very nicely if space would mind carrying sound waves a little further than usual, and it agreed. As for your concerns about biological weapons, we appreciate your restraint in not attempting such an approach. We've had several conversations with various bacteria and viruses, and they've agreed to be less harmful when they encounter humans. Very cooperative, most microorganisms. They seem to enjoy having someone to talk to. The transmission was joined by Dr. Hawking's cheerful voice. Oh, and regarding your question about massing your entire fleet, we'd rather you didn't. Not because we couldn't handle it, but because it would require asking space-time to create a very large pocket dimension to hold all those ships comfortably. Reality is willing to help, but we try not to make unreasonable requests. General Crix sputtered with rage. This is impossible. You cannot simply talk to viruses and bacteria as if they were intelligent beings. Why not? Asked a young voice. Bacteria are actually quite chatty once you learn their language. We had a lovely conversation with the common cold last week. It agreed to be much milder in its symptoms and to only visit when people really need a day off from work. A new image appeared alongside. Commander Chen, a human child who could not have been more than 8 years old, with bright eyes and a gap-toothed smile. This is Sarah, Chen explained. She's one of our most promising young researchers. Yesterday, she figured out how to make gravity apologize for being inconvenient. We're still working out the practical applications. The child waved cheerfully at the horrified Imperial Council. Hi. Gravity says it's sorry for making things fall down all the time. It's been feeling really bad about it for billions of years. I told it that falling down isn't always bad, but it still wants to try being nicer. Dr. Hawking's voice carried obvious pride. Young Sarah has quite a gift for communication with fundamental forces. Last month, she convinced mathematics to solve a problem that had puzzled our best theorists for years. The numbers seemed happy to help once someone asked them directly. Emperor Valdris felt the last of his confidence crumble. If human children could casually chat with gravity and mathematics, what hope did the Empire have of understanding, let alone defeating, such beings? What do you want? He asked, his voice heavy with the weight of inevitable surrender. Peace, Chen replied simply. We want to coexist peacefully with our galactic neighbors. We have no interest in conquest or domination. We just want to be left alone to continue our research and development. The transmission paused, then Dr. Hawking's voice returned with obvious excitement. Actually, we've made some progress on a project you might find interesting. We may have accidentally solved the heat death of the universe last Tuesday. We were trying to have a conversation with Entropy about energy conservation, and it mentioned that it had been feeling rather tired lately. We suggested it might like to take a break occasionally, and it seemed quite pleased with the idea. What does that mean? Dr. Millix asked, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. Well, Dr. Hawking replied thoughtfully, if entropy is willing to take regular breaks, the universe might not wind down after all. It could keep running indefinitely. Of course, we're still working out the details. Entropy wants to make sure it doesn't shirk its responsibilities, so we're trying to arrange a reasonable schedule. The little girl's voice joined in again. I told Entropy it could take weekends off. It seemed excited about that. It's never had a weekend before. The Imperial Council sat in stunned silence, trying to process the idea that humans were casually rescheduling the fundamental processes that governed the universe. Emperor Valdris made a decision that would echo through galactic history. Open diplomatic channels with the humans immediately. If we cannot defeat them, perhaps we can learn from them. A wise choice, Chen agreed. We'd be happy to establish formal diplomatic relations. Trade, cultural exchange, scientific cooperation. We're open to all possibilities, as long as everyone respects everyone else's boundaries. In the years that followed, the galaxy entered a new era. The Galactic Empire learned to coexist with neighbors who treated the impossible as merely improbable and the improbable as an interesting engineering challenge. Trade flourished between human and imperial space, though imperial merchants were often bewildered by human trade goods. Humans would offer containers of liquefied time for use in manufacturing processes, or crystallized gravity that could make ships more maneuverable. Cultural exchange programs allowed imperial citizens to visit human worlds, where they witnessed impossible sights that challenged everything they thought they knew about reality. Human children attended imperial schools where they politely asked their textbooks to explain themselves more clearly, much to the amazement of their teachers. Scientific cooperation led to breakthroughs that benefited both civilizations. Human scientists shared their methods of conversational physics with imperial researchers, though few non-humans seemed to have the knack for convincing reality to be flexible. But late at night, in the imperial palace on Zentara Prime, Emperor Valdris would sometimes stand at his windows and stare at the stars, wondering what the humans might accomplish next. The latest reports from his intelligence services mentioned a human teenager who claimed she had taught calculus to sing opera, and a research team that was having philosophical discussions with the concept of infinity. The universe, it seemed, was becoming a much more interesting place under human influence, and somewhere in the back of his mind, the Emperor couldn't help but wonder if that was such a bad thing after all. The galaxy had learned to coexist with a species that ruled not through force or fear, but through the simple, revolutionary idea of asking nicely. And the universe apparently was more than happy to oblige.